Hello and welcome. This is the second video in this series about understanding how exiled parts of your subconscious were created. The video content and information is heavily influenced by the internal family systems model of therapy. My name is James Fitzgerald. I am a Vermont state licensed clinical mental health counselor. Please review the video outlining the terms and conditions of this channel, the liability waiver, and ethical disclaimer. If you continue viewing this video, it constitutes your acknowledgement that you have read and agree to the terms and conditions of use, liability waiver, and ethical and legal disclaimers. Before you watch this video, please watch the introductory video about exiles' experiences and the video on the self. In this video, we'll explore what happens within your internal system and self that causes certain parts to become exiled and burdened with pain. In this video, abandonment will be explained through a clinical interpretation. As you watch this video, please be cautious and vigilant, as parts of your system may become activated. If the reactions become overwhelming, please stop the video, take a break, and talk to someone. Seek immediate professional help if needed. If you are my client, we can discuss the experience in our next session. When we experience trauma, it threatens the integrity of our self and the system. One of the ways we are affected by past trauma is the development of a fear of abandonment. Abandonment issues stem from a fear of loneliness, which can be a phobia or a form of anxiety. This can affect your relationships and often stems from some kind of childhood loss, rejection, or neglect. It is not uncommon for people to subconsciously want their partners to treat them the same way they were treated as a child. Other factors that turn loss into abandonment issues include environmental and medical factors, genetics, and brain chemistry. Early childhood experiences are the biggest contributor to developing abandonment issues when you become an adult. The traumatic event might include the loss of a parent by divorce or death, or not getting enough physical or emotional care as a child. Emotional abandonment occurs when parents do not let their children express themselves emotionally, when they ridicule their children, when they put too much pressure on their children to be perfect, when they treat their children like their peers, or when they don't provide the child with consistent, warm, or attentive interactions. Experiences that happen during a child's development will often continue to affect them into adulthood. The experiences can and do repeat themselves, and new harmful experiences compound the effects. This is why abandonment issues become more prevalent as you get older and can continue affecting your relationships. Abandonment issues can also develop after losing an intimate partner to divorce or death. Either through adult or childhood abandonment, these issues can negatively impact relationships, even the healthy ones. The individual who has experienced the events can present as 3 insecure attachment styles. The first style is the avoidant attachment. People who follow this style don't allow anyone to get close to them. You may feel like you can't open up or trust others, making you appear distant, private, or withdrawn. The second style is the anxious attachment. People with this type of attachment style cope by developing intensely close and dependent relationships with others. You may feel anxious about separating yourself from your partner and tend to be emotionally reactive. It may be easy to see conflicts as a concern that your partner may leave, which makes you act out of fear. The third style is the disorganized attachment. People with this attachment style have difficulty remaining intimate and close, but can also be inconsistent. You may feel anxious about being in a relationship or want to avoid the closeness. This attachment style may come with other potential disorders. A fear of abandonment presents itself mainly as fawning behavior, with people-pleaser parts protecting exiles that need reassurance that they are loved and won't be left alone. There is also a consistent anxiety that occurs with abandonment issues. Some common signs of abandonment issues include giving too much or being overly eager to please, jealousy in your relationship or envious of other relationships, trouble trusting your partner's intentions and motivations, assuming malicious, manipulative, or controlling intent, feeling insecure about your relationship, having difficulty in feeling emotionally vulnerable and or intimate, needing to control or manipulate or be controlled and manipulated by your partner, settling for unsatisfactory, toxic, and unhealthy relationships, and feeling trapped like a prisoner in the relationship. Following are some of the childhood experiences that can lead to abandonment issues and insecure attachment styles. Having a caregiver who is neglectful or unresponsive to the feelings and needs of a child is more likely to lead to an avoidant attachment style. It includes the experience of having a caregiver who is physically or emotionally abusive or intimidating. Having a caregiver who is inconsistent, sometimes warm and attentive, and other times cold and unresponsive or abusive, is more likely to lead to an anxious attachment style. It includes being the victim of sexual abuse, especially as a child or teen. It includes the experience of having a caregiver who is separated or absent, death of a parent, incarceration, or a parent who is not an active caregiver. Abandonment fears can be caused by any of these experiences and are not always the direct result of one particular event, but instead a pattern of not consistently meeting a child's physical and emotional needs. Sometimes this is caused by certain environmental factors or circumstances instead of parenting deficits. These environmental and social risk factors include things like being exposed to violence in the community or within the home, coming from low socioeconomic status, or being a member of a marginalized or oppressed group. Children who are raised in adoptive families or who are placed in foster care also often struggle with fears of abandonment and insecure attachments. Even children from loving, stable homes could have developed abandonment issues if a parent was frequently working or traveling, or if one parent struggled with chronic health or mental health conditions. Emotional abandonment happens when parents do not provide the emotional conditions and the environment needed for the child to develop in the usual healthy stages. The result of emotional abandonment is when a child has to hide a part of who they are in order to be accepted or not be rejected. Hiding shamed exiles schema includes the following core beliefs. It is not okay to make mistakes. It is not okay to demonstrate or express your feelings. The way you feel is not true or is not important. It is not okay to have needs. Everybody else's needs are more important than your needs. It is not okay to have success. You are not good enough, and accomplishments are not acknowledged. The following experiences are other types of abandonment. Children can't live up to their parents' expectations because they are often unrealistic and not age or developmental stage appropriate. Children are held responsible for other people's behaviors. They may be blamed for the actions and feelings of their parents. Disapproval of children is directed at their entire beings rather than a particular behavior. Examples of this are when a child is told he is worthless when he does not do his homework, or she is never going to be a good dancer because she missed a step in dance class. Parents do not view children as separate beings. Parents expect children to be extensions of themselves. Parents are not willing to take responsibility for their child's feelings, thoughts, and behaviors, but they expect their children to take responsibility for theirs. When parents' self-esteem is sought through their child's behavior. When children are treated as peers with no parent-child-adult distinction. People with abandonment issues may experience problems in relationships because they fear that the other person will leave them. Some signs and symptoms of abandonment issues in adults include the following. You are always wanting to please others, blended with a people-pleasing part. You are always giving too much in relationships, being a caretaker, blended with a caretaker part. You have an inability to trust others, pushing others away to avoid rejection, feeling insecure in romantic partnerships and friendships, and participating in an enmeshed, blended codependency, blended with the safety part. You have a need for continual reassurance that others love you and will stay with you. You have a need to control and manipulate others. You continue persisting with unhealthy relationships and lack the ability to maintain healthy adult relationships, moving quickly from one relationship to another. You have become an expert at sabotaging your relationships. Your relationships have a lack of emotional intimacy. Individuals who experienced abandonment in childhood may find themselves drawn to people who will treat them poorly and eventually leave them. When this occurs, it reinforces their fears and distrust of others. People who felt abandoned as children may be more likely to repeat this pattern with their children. But some emotionally abandoned children recognize this pattern. They can go on to nurture their own children and break the cycle of abandonment. Many of these signs of abandonment may also play out between people in a relationship. Stress or overwhelm can contribute to emotional abandonment. People with unmet needs often have a difficult time meeting the needs of others. Practicing self-care is an important part of making sure one's own needs are met. The person who practices self-care can then meet the needs of their child or partner in a healthy way. A fear of abandonment isn't a recognized condition or mental health disorder per se. Instead, it's considered a type of anxiety and is treated as such. Initial behaviors of abandonment fear are often not purposeful. Over time, however, the reaction these behaviors get, plus the attention that comes with it, can become self-reinforcing. That can cause someone to repeat the behaviors in order to get the response again. This behavior can have unhealthy consequences. Over time, it can ruin relationships. It can also prevent the development of healthy bonds. Children perceive, process, and store experiences of rejection, neglect, and abandonment differently than adults. Children's brains register things differently than when they are adults. What may seem like something minimal now as an adult could have been a serious issue to the child we once were, and stays in our unconscious as trauma. The emotional experiences of loneliness, rejection, neglect, loss, and grief are cast aside and exiled. Children take their experiences as the truth and solidify this by developing protective parts with negative core beliefs and a limited perspective on life. As adults, people have unconscious beliefs about how the world works. They lead their lives from and base their decisions on these core beliefs. If they do not question their core beliefs, they may live their lives from what they think are facts, but are not true at all. They may never come to realize that just because it happened to them doesn't mean it happened to everyone else, and they continue believing their experience is normal. Children who feel abandoned may develop beliefs, such as not deserving to feel safe, that the world is a dangerous place, that they can't rely on anyone to always be there for them, or they don't deserve to be loved or cared for. With these beliefs, the choices that the adult makes do not lead to feelings of being loved or happiness. A fear of abandonment is a complex phenomenon that can stem from a variety of developmental experiences, including loss or trauma. This fear has been studied from a variety of perspectives. Theories behind why fear of abandonment occurs include interruptions in the normal development of certain cognitive and emotional capacities, challenges with past relationships, and other problematic social and life experiences. Although it is not an official phobia, the fear of abandonment is arguably one of the most common and most damaging fears of all. People with the fear of abandonment may tend to display behaviors and thought patterns that affect their relationships. Ultimately, maladaptive ways of coping with this fear can result in the abandonment they dread becoming a reality. Consequently, this fear can be devastating. Understanding fear of abandonment is the first step toward resolving it. Our behaviors and actions in current relationships are all thought to be the result of old fears and learned concepts that take place in childhood. There are many theories that attempt to understand the fear of abandonment. The first theory relates to object constancy. In object relations theory, an offshoot of Freudian psychoanalysis, an object in one's mind is either a person, a part of a person, or something that somehow symbolizes one or the other. Object constancy is the concept that even when we are not in the physical presence of that person, our experience of them does not fundamentally change. This is related to the idea of object permanence first studied by the developmental psychologist Jean Piaget. Infants learn that objects continue to exist even when they are not experienced directly. Object constancy generally develops before the age of 3. As children grow and mature, the periods of separation lengthen and are often generated by the child as they, say, goes to school or spends the weekend at a friend's house. A child with good object constancy understands that important relationships are not damaged by time apart. The standard development of object constancy may be interrupted by traumatic events. Death or divorce are common causes, but even situations that seem relatively unimportant to the adults involved may affect developing this critical understanding. For example, children with parents in the military, those whose parents have little time to spend with them, and those with neglectful parents may also be at risk for interrupted object constancy. The next theory relates to archetypes in mythology. Mythology is filled with stories of abandoned or rejected lovers, primarily women who dedicate their entire selves to their partners, only to be left behind when the lover goes off to conquer the world. Some psychologists, such as Carl Jung, argue that these myths and legends have become part of our collective subconscious. At some primal level, we have internalized certain archetypes and stories and made them part of our shared worldview. For example, Hallmark movies, romance novels, Disney princess movies, romantic comedies, science fiction, music, drama, and on and on. We each have a personal myth as well, one that is not shared with others, but resides deep within the core of our beings. According to Jung, this personal myth is made up of our interpretations of the collective unconscious through the filters of our own experiences. From this perspective, the fear of abandonment is connected to these universal myths, but varies in severity according to our own personal memories. The next theory involves prior experiences. By the time we are adults, most of us have been through some significant changes: a death of a loved one, a friend moving away, a relationship ending, a transition from high school to college to marriage and parenthood. Although most of us adapt to changing circumstances, it is not uncommon to get stuck somewhere in the process of you grieving what once was. If you have been through a sudden and traumatic abandonment, such as losing someone to violence or tragedy, you may be at increased risk for developing this fear. When it comes to relationships, the resulting behaviors from fear of abandonment can potentially include the following. You may attach to others quickly, even to unavailable partners or relationships. You might fail to fully commit and may have had very few long-term relationships. You tend to move on quickly just to ensure that you don't get too attached. You aim to please, sometimes even engaging in unwanted sex. You might stay in relationships no matter how unhealthy they are, and struggle with being hard to please, hypercritical, judgmental, and passive-aggressive. You may have difficulty experiencing emotional intimacy and feel insecure and unworthy of love. You might find it hard to trust people, possibly often jealous or envious of everyone you meet. You may experience intense feelings of separation anxiety and have feelings of general anxiety and depression. You might tend to overthink things and work hard to figure out hidden meanings and malicious intent where there isn't any. You could be hypersensitive to criticism and contain repressed anger and control issues. And you might engage in negative self-critical thinking, self-blaming, self-doubting, and self-hating frequently. Abandonment issues have a negative effect on relationships. The fear of abandonment is highly personalized. Some people are solely afraid of losing a romantic partner, others fear abandonment in other relationships. To better explain how individuals with a fear of abandonment may navigate a relationship, here's an example of how a typical relationship may start and evolve. This example is especially true for romantic relationships, but there are many similarities in close friendships as well. The first phase is getting to know each other. At this point, you feel relatively safe. You are not yet emotionally invested in the other person. So you continue to live your life while enjoying time with your chosen person. Next up is the honeymoon phase. This phase occurs when you make the choice to commit. You are willing to overlook possible red or yellow flags because you just get along so well. You start spending a great deal of time with the other person, and you always enjoy yourself. You start to feel secure. The real relationship phase is next. The honeymoon phase cannot last forever. No matter how well two people get along, real life always intervenes. People get sick, have family problems, start working difficult hours, worry about money, and need time to get things done. Although this is a very normal and positive step in a relationship, it can be terrifying for those with a fear of abandonment who may see it as a sign that the other person is pulling away. If you have this fear, you are probably battling with yourself and trying very hard not to express your worries for fear of appearing clingy. The next phase involves the slight. People are human. They have moods and things on their minds. Regardless of how much they care for someone else, they cannot and should not be expected to always have that person at the forefront of their minds. Especially once the honeymoon period is over, it is inevitable that a seeming slight will occur. This often takes the form of an unanswered text message, an unreturned phone call, or a request for a few days of alone time. The reaction to the slight comes next. For those with a fear of abandonment, this is a turning point. If you have this fear, you are probably completely convinced that the slight is a sign that your partner no longer loves you. What happens next is almost entirely determined by the fear of abandonment, its severity, and the sufferer's preferred coping style. Some people handle this by becoming clingy and demanding, insisting that their partner prove their love by jumping through hoops or performing grandiose expressions of affection. Others run away, rejecting their partners before they are rejected. Still, others feel that the slight is their fault and attempt to transform themselves into the perfect partner in a quest to keep the other person from leaving. In reality, the slight is most likely not a slight at all. Simply put, sometimes people just do things that their partners do not understand. In a healthy relationship, the partner may recognize the situation for what it is, a normal reaction that has little or nothing to do with the relationship. Or they may feel upset by it, but address it with either a calm discussion or a brief argument. Either way, a single perceived slight does not become a dominating influence on the partner's feelings. The next phase requires you to see your partner's point of view. From your partner's point of view, your sudden personality shift seems to come from out of left field. If your partner does not suffer from a fear of abandonment, they probably do not have the slightest idea as to why their previously confident, laid-back partner is suddenly acting clingy and demanding, smothering them with attention, or pulling away altogether. Similar to phobias, it's impossible to simply talk or reason someone out of a fear of abandonment. No matter how many times your partner tries to reassure you, it will simply not be enough. Eventually, your behavior patterns and inconsolable reactions could drive your partner away, leading to the very conclusion that you fear most. For most people, the fear of abandonment is rooted in deep subconscious issues that are difficult to unravel alone. Although treating the fear itself is critical, it is also essential to build a feeling of belonging. Rather than focusing all of your energy and devotion on a single partner, focus on building a community. No one person can solve all of our problems or meet all of our needs. But a solid group of several close friends can each play an important role in our lives. Many people with a fear of abandonment state that they never felt like they had a tribe or a pack when they were growing up. For whatever reasons, they always felt othered or disconnected from those around them. That concludes this video. As we move forward in our sessions, there will be opportunities for you to map your parts. You and I can discuss this in your therapy sessions, providing a safe space to explore these aspects of yourself. If you are not working with me in therapy or coaching, I encourage you to find a qualified professional mental health care provider to speak with. I invite you to reflect on any other experiences not mentioned here that may have helped form an exile or burden an exiled part of you. Sharing these experiences can improve the program for you and others, and your identity will remain anonymous and confidential. I hope you were able to engage with this lesson safely. Remember, if at any time you feel anxious, depressed, angry, afraid, triggered, dissociated, overstimulated, or overwhelmed, please pause watching the video. You can reach out to me through a message in the client account portal, or you may wish to complete the meditation titled Soothing a Triggered Exile. If that meditation isn't available in your activities, please let me know, and I'll share it with you. If you are experiencing a crisis, please seek immediate mental health care and treatment from crisis services in your area. In the next several videos in this series, we will explore and review more exiled parts, their experiences, and their protective parts. In future videos, I will examine and review the protective parts of our systems, their roles, their burdens, and their emotions, perceptions, beliefs, and thoughts. If you enjoyed this video, if you learned something new, if you found this video helpful and informative, please like the video and subscribe to the channel so you get all the new content coming out daily. Thank you for your courage and willingness to explore these parts of yourself.